Hi there, and welcome to another episode of TPI Talks. In this episode, I managed to grab some time with Sony Professional's Mark Harrison. Just off the back of a major product launch, I spoke to Mark about how the global pandemic was changing the nature of video within live events and the new workflows that are already emerging. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Well, hi, Mark. Thanks very much for joining us. Before we go any further, could you just explain to the folks at home your role within Sony Professional Solutions?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, Stu. I'm Mark Harrison, and I'm product manager for live production infrastructure at Sony Professional.
And just before we go any further, obviously, we were speaking at very kind of odd times, to say the least. From your
Certainly,
side
yeah.
of Sony, what's the reaction been from Sony, and how's it been for the last month or so?
I think the most notable reaction has been that the company's been very concerned and put priority down to staff safety, predominantly looking after staff and of course families, extended families at home. And that's been the overriding priority. And certainly we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of update messages that have led with safety at work. Everybody's working from home at the moment, with a very few exceptions, in fact.
Now, one of the reasons we were quite keen to speak today is Sony, from your side, have just released a whole load of new products, and in a time when we don't have trade shows, obviously NAB didn't happen, Pro Light and Sound, a couple of weeks before. How has it been dealing with a product launch of this kind of scale during this time?
Yeah, I mean, NAB was cancelled fairly late, very very close to the show. So although maybe not wholly unexpected at the time it happened, it was close and a lot of preparation had been made. NAB for us is a real chance to explore possibilities with customers, and it's a real opportunity to get to talk to our industry and understand where we can play a critical role. Of course, the challenge when they cancelled the show was to reorganize the entire show and take it to a digital platform.
And obviously TPI, we're on the kind of the live production side of things. Could you maybe just talk through some of the highlights of the latest launch?
Yeah, live production, enhancements of standards and features across our end-to-end IP live solutions for broadcast. And we've been working very closely and continue to do so with the standards committees to develop open standards as well as implement and promote those. And of course, Sony's been working a long time on cloud native toolkits and IP connectivity. Those tools, particularly now, support value and efficiency in production, and we were keen to promote those too. And there's quite a lot of new developments and tool sets that are around in the IP and cloud-based arena. We are seeing in the industry generally an increase in demand for live production. Our customers need to make more content constantly, and they need to make more content with the same or less sometimes. So the cost per minute has to be better. They need workflow efficiency, and they need interoperability. And this is one of the key reasons that we use open standards across the range, so that we can provide proper interoperability and give the customer bases as much choice as they can in terms of selection of equipment to use as a solution.
And it's interesting you talk about kind of products for various solutions, as we're now in a stage where live events aren't happening, concerts aren't happening, and people are having to turn equipment that was maybe used for one purpose and maybe kind of repurpose it. So especially maybe from the camera side of thing for streaming solutions. What's on offer in terms of the streaming world?
In the context of the global pandemic, teams still want to be able to use very high quality material. But of course, the demands now are to be able to do that in a more dispersed and isolated environment. The new technology and IP-based technologies that we're using now and bringing in allow us to build efficiency and the agility or scalability that we need. And of course, the open standards underpin the interoperability for us. In terms of NAB, I think in streaming in particular, there were a couple of announcements in the smaller end. XD-Cam camcorders, of course, the Z190 and Z280 camcorders are both having streaming outputs added. So they will support RTSP and RTMP. We launched 2 new micro cameras, the SRG XP1 and the XP25. One's a fixed lens, one's with a wide angle lens, and one's a 25 times zoom. But they have the ability to be deployed in greater numbers, of course, in live events, and they're much more discreet than other cameras. They need a single Ethernet cable, power and Ethernet to be cabled back. But of course, they're part, and they can form part of an IP infrastructure. We have some other technology that they can integrate with, as well as PTZ cameras. So we have an AI-based, difficult to say, edge analytics box that gives us chroma keyless overlays, which we can use with those cameras as a solution for production. Virtual production, I think, is probably a big. We'll see a big increase in virtual production, and we have a virtual production system that sits entirely in the cloud, so we can stream 6 camera systems into the cloud, into a virtual solution that has a virtual vision mixer and audio mixer and production tools, which you can access through your PC. The system has a couple of clip players, a still store, and it integrates with an external title and graphics machine. We have technology called QoS that allows us to manage drops in 4G, 3G wireless transmission if we're doing wireless streaming into the cloud. And the net result is that the machine will produce 3 RTMP streams ready to go to the web. So whether that's Facebook Live or YouTube Live, or your favorite CDN. The enhancements that we're making with end-to-end IP live production systems will allow us over IP to do remote production quite easily over wide area networks. We've got live events at top end and bottom end of the business. Then IP gives us the opportunity to integrate the workflow and the solution so that actually the content can be used and reused across all of the platforms. And that gives us the ability then to reach a much bigger audience potentially.
It's interesting. I think scalability is going to be the key thing moving forward, isn't it? From the small show to the large show, people need to be kind of able to do both, and probably with the same equipment in some ways, right?
But budgets always feature in your selection of solution for a given content quality and of course the distribution channel. So I wouldn't perhaps advocate taking a full-blown 28 camera OB truck to do a streaming event necessarily, but of course there are opportunities now if you can monetize both a live event with a ticket-paying audience, although we don't have those at the moment, and a simultaneous streaming event, then of course you're accessing many more people.
And even in the last month or so, what have the demands been that you've been seeing from customers in terms of either with this cloud-based system or even with the products themselves that they're really needing right now?
Yeah, the main increase in demand is really for remote production and remote operations. There is a clear need in sport immediately as they're trying to restart football. The guidelines for coverage and production teams is quite tight. So they're reducing production teams on site, and that puts a demand on being able to remote produce content that traditionally would be done by 20 people inside an OB truck. That we've had to produce solutions very quickly that allow us to remote control vision mixers. There are recorders, replay operators to consider. I think one thing is for sure, people will always be prepared to work in more difficult circumstances in the future. We will see new workflows, that's for sure. And I believe that once we've adopted new workflows in the very short term, in the light of this terrible experience, then I think we'll see a lot of new workflows defined and retained long term. So I think things will change.
It is interesting I say that, how the video package that we know of it as today, it probably in the long term we are going to see a difference, right?
Yeah, without a doubt, yes. And it is difficult to know exactly what those differences will be because we're working through some of them now. But they will absolutely inevitably change.
That's another kind of talking point that we've seen developing in the last couple of weeks is, again, this is very much from the live touring perspective, but the broadcast side of things, which before now streaming you would probably kind of put under as well. There were two different channels. You had your live tour, and then a feed would go out to either an OV truck or maybe some kind of online base. But they're still seen as two different things. You bring in the broadcast, whereas now it does seem that the two worlds are very much amalgamating. Is that something you're seeing from the manufacturer standpoint as well?
I think we're seeing mainly changes in consideration of workflow. Right. IT technology and IP particularly allows us two things in terms of production. It allows us to do more efficient workflows in terms of being able to perhaps share production, so that you may have two events on two sites, and you can bring those back over IP and produce them as one program. You can produce a program in one studio in a gallery, 1 minute, and then switch to another studio with the same gallery and the same production staff another minute. So you have the ability to share resources between productions and studios and locations.
The speed of which things are happening right now, I mean, from week to week, it seemed like, oh, there's a whole new kind of either event or a new idea or a new project. And it's not even like this is existing on the whiteboard as a kind of, an idea they've plucked out for years. They're actually happening and the infrastructure being put in place. And, with this, as I mentioned before, the amalgamation of broadcast and live, looking towards the future, do you reckon this speed is going to continue?
I think in the short term, it's obviously increased a huge pace inside broadcast. I think it's given people the opportunity to look at perhaps ideas and ways of working that they have perhaps hadn't had time to develop in the past. I think it will spawn a lot of new workflow innovation, definitely in the short term. To make some of these solutions work elegantly, of course, there needs to be some more development. But that's coming, and we're already developing a smart production solution, which will be a hybrid solution, which allows us to do a mixture of on-location working or hybrid remote production. We've already got the cloud-based solution for production, and I think that will become more and more user demanded, if you like, and it's a subscription service, so you pay for what you use, which is quite a new model for certainly for the broadcast industry recently anyway. There's another side to the remote production and innovating quickly, and that is, of course, if you're producing lots more content with all these new tools for workflow and production, you've got to manage it, and this is a really key area, and it's one of the big areas that we're developing inside our new media solutions area section for one. But also inside broadcast and professional services area. And that's really what we call intelligent media services. Intelligent media services are a collection of services and solutions that we run. So there is a product called CI, which allows us to take feeds direct into the cloud, where we can post-produce, we can collaborate, and we can manage the content in the cloud in one environment. But we also have other products like Navigator X, which is a content management tool, and that allows us to categorize content. Means that we can find it, whether that content is in one or many different storage areas. We can bring the whole catalog together, and that allows us, once we've got that catalog of content, we know where everything is. It enables us to be able to reuse that content, and of course enables us to repurpose it and monetize it much more effectively. And we have a lot of increase in interest in content management as well as content production.
Well, fantastic. Well, I mean, best of luck with it. It sounds great.
Thank
Mark,
you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Stu. Bye-bye.